from the north. Also, her mercenaries are in her midst like fat bulls. For they also are turned back, they have fled away together. They did not stand. For the day of their calamity had come upon them, the time of their punishment. Her noise shall go like a serpent, for they shall march with an army, and come against her with axes, like those who chop wood. They shall cut down her forest, says the Lord, though it cannot be searched, because they are innumerable, and more numerous than grasshoppers. The daughter of Egypt shall be ashamed. She shall be delivered into the hand of the people of the north. The Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, says, Behold, I will bring punishment on Ammon of No, and Pharaoh and Egypt with their gods and their kings, Pharaoh and those who trust in him. And I will deliver them into the hand of those who seek their lives, into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and the hand of his servants. Afterward it shall be inhabited as in the days of old, says the Lord. But do not fear, O my servant Jacob, and do not be dismayed, O Israel, for behold, I will save you from afar, and your offspring from the land of their captivity. Jacob shall return, have rest, and be at ease. No one shall make him afraid. Do not fear, O Jacob, my servant, says the Lord, for I am with you, for I will make a complete end of all the nations to which I have driven you. But I will not make a complete end of you. I will rightly correct you, for I will not leave you wholly unpunished. A very good morning to you on this Friday, the 27th of September. It is just gone after 7 o'clock Central European time, and of course South African time as well. My name is Theophilus van Rensburg-Linster, and together during these conversations, Monday through to Friday, I share this specific space with Terry Martin. Terry, good morning.
Good morning, Theo. Good morning, listeners.
It is indeed a good morning. Every morning should be a good morning, must be a good morning. Reality sometimes dictates that the goodness of the morning is traded for some other descriptor, maybe the consequence of a bad and difficult night, but sometimes also worrying contemplations of the future, questions we have that induce some restlessness into our souls. We trust that these moments help you to think through the realities of life the way that God sees it, and sees it through the life of the prophet Jeremiah. Terry, thank you so very much for taking us through these serious questions and contemplations of cultures and how they collapse, and the dangers and difficulties for us each individually as we try to make sense of something around us that sometimes do not make sense at all. I'm going to give over to you right away, Terry. 20 seconds. Thank you, Terry.
Why does God totally destroy some nations and not others? Why does God totally destroy some nations and not others? That's the question in chapter 46, verse 20 to 28. In Jerry's journal, he has made entries about the demise of the covenant people, the covenant culture, which is the Hebrew people. He's called of God he's called by God in chapter 1, and then from chapter 2 to chapter 45, his entries are about how and why Jerusalem and Judah. Why Judah and Israel? Why the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom will fall? Now he switches gear and he comes into a section from chapter 46 onwards, 46 to 49. He's going to list 9 nations, 9 ancient cultures, all who are culpable uh, because of their responses to the covenant people. It is not to be forgotten that in Genesis 12, that those who bless these people will be blessed by God. Those who curse them will be cursed by God. It says that in Abram and in Abram's seed, all the families, Mishpatah, um, all these nations, all these families of the earth will be blessed. And so the main idea in this section is as follows: embrace base reality because it carries with it a conserving capacity. The embrace of base reality, and base reality is God. God does just not stand behind the dim unknown in a paralyzed kind of way, but he is actively involved in his world, in his creation. He's not winding it up as a clock so that it can wind down. He's actively involved in preserving, conserving his creation. And so there are a couple of ideas that rise in this section of the story. And each of it has to do with this fractal idea that Israel must die in order to rise. It is fractal because across the scriptures you will find that idea of dying and rising, death and resurrection, because God brings order out of chaos in Genesis 1. God allows his creation to come out of the chaos of what the ancient peoples understood as their context, their world, informed by the gods and the great I am. Exodus 3:14. I am who I am. I am, I will be, has to do with who God is. And he's the one who makes some very interesting decisions here, because the text says in verse 20 to 24 that hostile commitment to base reality, a hostile commitment toward God carries consequences. And inevitably, those consequences have destruction built into them. A hostile commitment toward base reality carries dire consequences. And here, Egypt is the first in line of the ancient cultures, the 9 ancient cultures who are culpable because of their response to these people, their response to the people of God. And you see the disorder that now crashes in onto Egypt, who's the first of the 9, who is culpable. We stand in a day with great animosity toward Israel for her attack on Gazans and the Gaza Strip, and she's been surrounded on every side, really between the devil and the deep blue sea, isn't it? The Mediterranean, and then all the countries of the Levant around the Mediterranean area that are attacking her. So this is a very timely word because Egypt, this ancient culture, is the first one to fall under God's judgment. And in an extended section in chapter 49, her demise is recounted. So we break in on verse number 20 because Egypt is here described as a beautiful heifer. And the bull cult is an especially striking metaphor because one of Egypt's gods is Apis, and Apis is a bull, and we know from the 10 plagues that descend on Egypt, each of those plagues are targeting an Egyptian deity, an Egyptian god, showing the supremacy and the preeminence of Yahweh. There is no one like him among the gods. And so Egypt is a fly, a gadfly, the older versions say, a biting fly, a nipper, a fly that nips away and eats its prey or eats its leaves that it is feeding on. It's a biting fly from the north. And that's, of course, a reference to Babylon. Her hired soldiers in her midst are like fattened calves. The mercenaries who fight on her behalf, fattened calves. Yes, they have turned and fled together. They did not stand, for the day of their calamity has come upon them, the time of their punishment. And so, because of Egypt's responses to the people of God, she now is culpable. She's going to face the judgment of God. And the judgment of God will come on her in the form of Babylon. Verse 22, Egypt, she makes a sound like a serpent gliding away, for her enemies march in force and come against her with axes, like those who fell trees. They shall cut down a forest, declares the Lord, though it is impenetrable, because they are more numerous than locusts. They are without number. And Egypt will suffer demise, and she will be delivered into the hand of the people of the north. So hostile commitment toward base reality, toward God. A rejection of the transcendent carries with it destruction. Those who fly in the face of God and say, no God. The fool has said in his heart, no God. The one who raises his fist toward heaven in rebellion toward him will experience God's judgment. And so Egypt is going to face it, and ultimately, of course, Babylon will face it. The disorder continues in verse 25 and 26 because hostile gods and kings draw God's judgment. Verse number 25 says, behold, I am bringing punishment upon Ammon of Thebes and Pharaoh and Egypt and her gods and her kings, upon Pharaoh and those who trust in him. So the gods and the kings of the nation are going to be brought to nothing. They're going to be brought to naught. That's how deep the disorder and the chaos will be that descends upon this nation. Verse 25, the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, said, behold, I am bringing punishment upon Ammon of Thebes and Pharaoh. And then in verse 26, I will deliver them into the hand of those who seek their life, into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Afterward, Egypt shall be inhabited as in the days of old, declares the Lord. So the Lord will destroy her, but he promises that her destruction will not be total annihilation. She will be inhabited as in days of old. So God reserves the right to destroy and to utterly destroy. Watch, the destruction here is in a sense partial, not total annihilation. And because God is in charge over what happens, he can say to Egypt, you will be inhabited as in days of old. But he can say to Jacob in verse 27, my servant, do not be dismayed, for behold, I will save you from far away, and your offspring from the land of their captivity. Jacob shall return and have quiet and ease, and now none shall make him afraid. Fear not, O Jacob, my servant, declares the Lord, for I am with you. Israel lives in fear of annihilation. Even today, from the river to the sea are the words that are uttered in from the mouths and the lips of those who are in total opposition to her existence. It says, I will make a full end of the nations to which I have driven you, but of you I will not make a full end. Men and women, listen to this line. But of you I will not make a full end. Your annihilation will never be total. You will not be wiped off into oblivion. I will discipline you in just measure, and I will by no means leave you unpunished. Because covenant commitment and embrace of base reality carries partial, not total devastation. So whenever there is a semblance of turning to God or a smidgen of faithfulness to God, God reserves the right in making a decision whether annihilation is total or destruction is partial. He says, I will discipline you, Israel, in just measure, and I will by no means leave you unpunished. But remember, you will return. Your offspring will come back to the land. Isn't that amazing? So out of disorder, God can bring order. And so I want to leave 3 questions with you this morning, and they are huge questions, and there are huge discussions in our present day world. How does the West reinvent itself in the face of tottering, in the face of collapse, in the face of demise? How does she reinvent itself, herself? Are there ways in which she could grab hold of the future? What does she need to do? Number 2, what signs are there that we are in demise at the present moment, even in our own land? Now, we are very positive about government of national unity. We're seeing some upswings in certain sectors when it comes to investment. And so people are saying, well, it's not as bad as it could be. But what signs are there that we are crumbling on the inside? Look at criminality, corruption, and the like. What are some of the signs that we can pinpoint? And then the third question, what does the church need to do as salt and light inside of a culture that is on the downturn, in a civilization that's on a downturn? What does the church need to do? What's the posture of the people of God? Over to you, Theo.
Well, these are very, very important questions here, Terry, and they do point at the need to answer very, very specifically where we need to posture ourselves. Thank you so very, very much, Terry, taking us there through Jeremiah 46. That was from the section from verse 20 through to verse 28. I'm struck by the fact that God comes through, and these heartwarming, deeply encouraging words, do not fear, O Jacob, my servant, says the Lord, for I am with you. I know sometimes we can rip that out of its context. Thank you so very, very much, Terry, for alerting us to the specific context here this morning. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this Friday morning. I'm already almost in Monday. We see you back here on the Fifth Connection on Monday morning, the same time. Terry, I wish you a wonderful weekend, and thank you so much for selecting this beautiful next song that we're going to play.
Thank you, Theo. Thank you, listeners.